Hello, I'm Cheryl Meyer, and I'm otherwise known as Cheryl M. Health Muse. And what my goal is to inspire you to lead a healthier life. So when I proposed my podcast, I proposed that we present it in two different segments. The first one is It Feels Good to Feel Good, Future Proof Your Health, where I get to share everything I have learned to return my health back to relative wellness and to live a pain-free life in spite of the fact that I have autoimmune disease. But the second part of my podcast is this episode, and that's Tell Me Your Story, the Health Muse is in. My concept with this is it's all fine and well that you hear me tell my story, but I get a lot of, it's all fine and well that it worked for you, but it's not going to work for me. And I wanted you to hear that there are lots of people out there that have made changes in their lifestyle that have supported their health and brought them back to relative wellness. We all have a couple things in common. We all owned our own health. Whatever the doctor was suggesting we did was going on a parallel path to us making these lifestyle changes where we did things that cleaned up our toxic load. We all pay attention to our body. You'll hear jazz in the background because I want you to listen to the rhythm of your health, and I want you to pay attention to what your body is telling you. My body had been trying to tell me that I was going to topple over into toxic load for some time. I just wasn't listening. So if you clean up your lifestyle and if you listen to your body, you have a very good chance not of being deprived in any way, but returning to feeling darn good. And that's what these podcasts are really all about. So thank you for joining me. This is going to be a Tell Me Your Story, the Health Muse is in episode, and I hope you enjoy it. And I hope that we all inspire you to lead a healthier, happier life. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to another edition of Tell Me Your Story. And today I have two guests, and we really got together so that we could have a conversation about them being guests. And when the conversation got going, it was so fantastic. We just went for the full hour, and I want to share everything that they said because it's loaded with great information. I had the owners of Plowing Ahead Ranch on the podcast, and they're going to be on the screen shortly. They are a Sedona rancher. Actually, they're in Verde Valley.
Camp Verde, yeah.
Camp Verde. We have two homes, one in this area, and we started buying beef from this couple at a local farmer's market, and we were blown away at the quality of their meat. There is no comparison. It's less expensive and more high quality than anything we can get from anywhere else. And so we're thrilled when we come to Sedona because we immediately put our order down and go down and pick up our meat, because it's not just it, we just had a conversation at the end of this about what grass-fed, grass-finished means, but what I want is meat that's been humanely treated and that isn't loaded with toxins, and that's what we get from this ranch. The man who is the rancher is he has an autoimmune disease himself, and partly he started his own ranching as self-defense for his own body, and he now has pretty much taken his autoimmune disease and put it into remission. But it started off with a dozen chickens running around, and he couldn't get over the quality of the eggs that he was getting. So food quality matters, and that's what this podcast is all about. I'm really delighted to introduce you to Jake and Shannon Wolfe. Before we cut over to that conversation, my husband is on with us, and he does all the production for all of my podcasts. He also edits my books. He is a true soulmate and partner in crime, and he'll read books that I don't have time to read so that he can tell me new information and stuff that I need to know about health. So he is my perfect partner, and he and I got together because he wanted to go on a get well journey with me, and we both feel fantastic. So I want to introduce you to my husband, John Gins.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm really happy that we're able to do this. I didn't expect to be on camera today because I thought we were just going to have a great conversation with Shannon and Zach. But I'm happy to see you all for the first time.
So stay on the podcast, because if you want to learn what the differences are between conventional meat and great, healthy meat that's been treated right and that will make your body feel great, then you'll enjoy the conversation we just had with Zach and Shannon. So thank you.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and start with my history. And Cheryl, John, we've talked about this in the past when we met a few years ago at the farmers markets, and we really made that connection because when I was in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with Graves' disease, which is hyperactive thyroid, and a lot of it had to do with lifestyle. I was a young kid. I was living hard and fast and not taking good care of myself, and got extremely sick because of it, and dealing with the autoimmune issues and so forth. And I was really fortunate to connect with a very good doctor and get using Western medicine to kind of bring myself back to a healthier state. But I was told that at 22, 23 years old, that this is going to be the rest of your life. You're going to have to continue to take this medication. You're probably going to have either a radioactive iodine treatment, a surgery, something like this to correct you. And I really have always felt that if you listen to your body's telling you what it needs. You just have to be receptive to hearing it. And so I started making a lot of lifestyle changes, changes in my diet, and just really listening to the things that were necessary to improve myself. And that started with just basic changes in store-bought food and so forth. But I started realizing that even store-bought food was causing problems for me. I'd eat you shouldn't eat a hamburger or a steak or something like that and feel like you got punched in the stomach. So we had the ranch property here. We got that a little over 10 years ago now, and just really looking to be a little bit more self-sustaining. And I started out with half a dozen chickens and started doing my own store-bought or my own farm-raised eggs. And the difference in that was just absolutely amazing.
It's night and day, not only in taste, but in omega-3s.
Night and day. Yeah, it is absolutely a night and day difference where, I like to have a couple of eggs with my breakfast in the morning, and I'd eat store-bought eggs and again, feel like I got punched in the stomach. And then, an hour later, you're hungry again. You didn't get any nutrition out of it. So when we started doing our own eggs, I realized I'd have a couple of eggs in the morning, and next thing you know, it's a couple hours past lunch and you never got hungry and you felt great. You didn't have those digestive issues. And we said, okay, we're really on to something here. So we had been working on the property, and the property just needed a ton of work. And the first couple of years I was here, I was leasing the pastures out for hay production while I was working on other things, the house, the yard, just getting things up and going. And we decided to do a couple of cows at that point. And I had friends that had a dairy down in the Gilbert area outside of Phoenix. And so with the dairy cattle, any of your male calves that are born are basically useless for the dairy. So they were typically euthanized as soon as they were born. And they were trying to find a way to market those cattle in some way. So I wound up buying
really
3 Jersey steers, which is, it is. And it was really, really wonderful of them to be looking for a different approach to how to do things. So we bought these 3 Jersey steers from them. We paid $200 for them, and just started doing a grass-fed beef like that. And pretty, it worked out well in a way. A Jersey steer is not a beef cow. Let's just say that. They're much smaller. There is a market for it, and there's a good concept behind it with smaller portions of meat and so forth. But it's not exactly what I was looking for. But the difference in being able to do our own beef was just as miraculous as doing our own eggs. And we thought, well, we're really onto something here, and started working with another friend of mine that owns a bigger ranch outside of Flagstaff, or owns the Turquoise Ranch, and started doing an Angus cross beef. And just really, it's much better beef cattle for what I'm doing, for being marketable and so forth. And but the difference in the quality of meat, whether you're doing whatever you're doing, when you get away from feeding the GMO feeds and your store-bought feeds and the corns, all that, and you go back to a natural feed source, you're already creating a much better, much healthier animal, and you are what you eat. So by doing that, we started looking at how do we expand. We're working on a very small piece of property here. We're just under 11 acres. About 8.5 of that is in pasture and is in production. And we're in Arizona. That's an extremely arid climate, and it doesn't grow grass the way that the Northwest does, or the Southeast. And Arizona really gained a reputation for not being good cattle country. So we have the resource of irrigation here, using water off of the Verde River and the Verde Valley. And that's all well and good, but you still need to be doing other conservation efforts. And that's how we started working with Mother Road Brewing Company out of Flagstaff, Arizona, and using their what's referred to as brewer's grain or distiller's grain, which is all it is a malted barley that's been crushed and basically steeped like you would for tea in the first process of beer production. And that wet grain becomes a waste product for the breweries. So they're steeping the grain, they're taking the liquid out of that, it's going into their fermenters. At that point, they're adding their yeast, their hops, everything else to make beer. And this waste product for them, this wet barley, is just an outstanding source of nutrition for cattle, and very much part of their
Is it
what their
organic?
natural diet would be. It is, yeah. And to my understanding, at this point, there is no such thing as a GMO barley. Yeah, because barley is a very hardy crop. It's used as a cover crop for a lot of other things, and so it hasn't needed to be modified. And then the way it works for the production for the beer consumption is that they're not using any herbicides or pesticides on that. That you just basically accept there's going to be a small amount of weeds in that crop, and you live with it, which is the right thing to do. I mean, it's really what we need to be doing on a lot of other things, and eliminate a lot of this regulation. So that spent barley product is approximately, depending on the brew and the malt of the barley, is typically between 23 and 26% protein count, which is far higher than most of your processed store-bought feeds. The cattle absolutely love it. And what that does for us is allows us to supplement the feed with something that's a very high nutritional base, and also to regulate the amount of pasture we're using, so we're not overgrazing our land. We're giving our cattle a complete diet. They're still on grass pasture 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but they're getting an additional food source, so we're able to maintain more pasture. The other thing it's doing for us is it's cutting down our water consumption in our arid climate by just drastically. I mean, I've estimated about 50%. When you're feeding the wet grain, you're using less drinking water. You're using less irrigation water. You're
Which
able
makes
to,
sense.
yeah, it really does. And it's a great system. And Mother Road's just outstanding to work with, because they are huge on the conservation efforts for, keeping our rivers flowing. And they've just been absolutely wonderful to work with. And this is not something that we're the only people that have thought of this. This is a very common practice all through the world, and this has been going on since man started brewing beer. And once again, beer saving us again, just the way it did in the Middle Ages, when people were being poisoned by the water, and people drinking beer were the ones that were staying healthy. And so it's just a wonderful symbiotic relationship between us, and it just produces a fantastic quality of beef. So by making these
Well, and
types of changes, when
your
you get
beef
back
tastes
to
better than any beef I have ever eaten from anywhere.
well, thank you. We sure appreciate that, and we take a lot of pride in what we do, and we take a lot of pride in doing it right.
And we've
And
tried a couple of the
not
other
only
people
doing,
from the farmers markets around here, and there's no comparison in taste, none.
yeah, there's a lot of, and it really comes down to the taste that you want in your beef. Some people want a straight grass-fed, grass finish for the flavor. It's not my flavor. It's not what I enjoy necessarily. I mean, I am a hunter. We hunt for meat, not for food, or not for horns or trophies or something like that. So in that aspect, I want my game to taste like game. I want my deer to taste like deer, my elk to taste like elk, and my beef to taste like beef. They should have very distinct, different flavors, but to each their own. I mean, there's a lot of outstanding producers in the Verde Valley, and it's a small area. And I think we have probably about what do you figure, 24 ranches in this area that are doing production, small scale production to the public, trying to serve their community and
Well,
trying to
and one
serve our
guy said
state.
he was using the beer, barley, just like you, but his
Mhm.
beef was no comparison in taste.
Oh, that's interesting, and it's yeah, and it probably has a lot to do with their feed programs or what their pastures are or how they're doing things. I mean, interesting thing about what we do. I mean, again, we're a very small operation, so under 11 acres here, we're not going to do a breeding operation here. We are a feed and finish. We do not have the resource to keep bull and cows and breed calves. But when you look at your cattle ranching in general, 50% of your calves are going to be born as bulls, and there's not the purpose to keep that many bulls. So you castrate the vast majority of them, and once that animal becomes a steer, its lot in life is to become food in the end. So we just utilize the castrated male cattle, the steers, and we take them at a very early age, typically anywhere from 5 to 7 months after doing what we refer to as a soft weaning, where they're separated from mom to where there's a fence between them. They're still able to be next to each other. They're still able to have that connection, but the calf is no longer able to nurse. And they say even that will help with the quality of beef in the end. I mean, anything you can do to reduce stress in these animals is helpful.
Oh,
So we're
absolutely.
taking
I
our
don't think
philosophy.
people realize
Yeah,
that the way conventional ranching is done, those animals have all kinds of stress hormones in their meat. And I don't know about you, but I don't need any more. I made plenty of my own. So,
sure.
yeah, it's critical.
Yeah, it's about changing the understanding of how agriculture can be. And I'm certainly not trying to pit old agriculture against new agriculture. People had ideas 100, 150 years ago of what they thought was going to be a vast improvement on cattle, on raising cattle. And maybe that's not proven to be true at this point. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's certainly not. But people need time to change ideas. We need to do some trial and error. And that's, people ask me, why'd you name your ranch Plowing Ahead? And I said, well, it's like planning ahead without the plan. We didn't know what we were doing going into this. We went into this to create better food for ourselves. And by creating better food for ourselves, thought, we need to create better food for our community, and better food for our communities becoming better food for our state. And it's really becoming a cooperation where instead of each individual ranch in this area trying to one up the other guy and cut each other's throat to be successful, that's not what it's about. It needs to be about working together to elevate us all and create a food hub here in the Verde Valley. Verde Valley's history has always been agriculture. I mean, this is what this part of the state is, and we really need to get back to that. And instead of us having to go to the bigger markets, Phoenix, Flagstaff, places like that, which for me is an hour and a half away, I want to bring that market to the Verde Valley and really just start educating, and bringing awareness to better food production. And that's really been the silver lining of this COVID-19 pandemic we're dealing with, is that people looked at the supply chains in the grocery store, and like you said earlier, the people think chocolate milk comes from chocolate cows, and people just do not have an understanding of where food comes from. People think the food just comes from the grocery store where animals are not harmed, and that's just completely asinine. So with the supply line collapse that we started experiencing in early March, people started looking to local agriculture again and taking on a new point of view of how much food is actually produced. What are my neighbors doing that have a bunch of cows in their yard? They're not pets. This is our business. And so much of that is, it's just really changed attitudes, and I'm hoping that will be sustained. I don't know that everybody that buys quarter, half, and whole beef from us, or buys a pound of ground beef or a couple steaks at a time, are going to be long-term
I
customers.
would bet that once they taste it, they're hooked, because there is a big difference.
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's a huge difference. And but so much of the focus coming back to, it's really been a way for us to educate people on, this is where your food's coming from, this is the quality of product you should be getting, this is what food should taste like, this is what food should feel like when you eat. And we really hit a point. I really feel like in my grandparents' generation, that good food meant good medicine. And that's how you
good
had
food
people
is
live.
Medicine. Medicine is not medicine.
Sure. Absolutely. And I really look for a balance with things, and good food is medicine. You're absolutely right. And you saw people in my grandparents' generation, my great-grandparents' generation, that were living into their mid-90s and living very healthy to that point. But now we're at a point where our food is over-processed, is not actually food. It's who knows exactly what is going into it.
It's
You
dyed,
look at
and
the
it
list
has
of ingredients.
glue in it and all kinds of crap.
Yeah, it is. It's just absolute crap. And we're also at a point where we're just absolutely over-medicated as a society. And we need to get back to, without doing the Western medicine in my early 20s to get my thyroid issues under control, I would have been far worse off. But I was able to do that for a few years and change my diet, change my lifestyle. And I'm 2 decades now that I have not had to take any medication whatsoever. I never had surgery.
Huge.
I never
Congratulations.
did the iodine treatments. Yes, thank you. And it's really miraculous. I was told that was going to be an impossibility. It's absolutely not. It's just the motivation to look for better ways to do things. And certainly not everybody's in a situation where, they're able to raise a cow in their backyard. And, a lot of people try, and it typically turns out to be a bad idea. But you have so many resources locally wherever you're at. Whatever part of this country, whatever part of the world, look for your local producers, look for your farmers markets, do your research, and ask for transparency in what you do. And that's the biggest part of what we've done, is we are completely upfront and honest about the way we raise cattle. There's a lot of people have the ideas of, I don't want any corn fed. And I agree, I don't want any corn fed either. People have the idea of, I just want a 100% grass fed, grass finished beef. Well, by definition, people don't understand what that means. And it can mean a lot of things. A grass fed beef can be fed moldy hay, knee deep in muck in a feedlot. But since that moldy hay is a grass product, that is still considered a grass-fed, grass-finished beef. Do your research, reach out to people, and anybody that tells you that their feed program's a big secret, or you cannot come to their ranch and see how cattle are raised, you probably don't want to be dealing with that. I don't want to eat secrets. So we're very big on just trying to do the right things. And it started with doing the right things for ourselves, and it's morphing into doing the right thing for everybody and trying to elevate everyone else to do things better as well. And it's a learning process. There's a ways to go. We make changes constantly out here to figure out what works, what doesn't, how can we do better.
I actually have a chapter in my second book about get to know your farmer and your rancher. Start the conversation.
Yeah.
Go to farmers markets. There's wonderful things at farmers markets. So if you're a foodie and you're eating healthy, that's where you can find all kinds of great stuff. But then get to know who's growing your food. Get to know your rancher. Get to know what his practices are. Go visit him, because that's
Yeah.
all part of the process of understanding why that farmer's product or that rancher's product is making your body feel better. And it's important.
Yeah.
And even in California, we have some great farmers markets, and they all have different products. Um, they all have grass-fed, grass-finished beef, but it's not done like yours, and it doesn't taste like yours. So, you start to develop tastes for better food, and food quality matters.
Absolutely. And you'll also find that by doing that, yeah, at the farmer's market, you might be paying a little bit more, but the quality, you're paying for the quality of what you're getting. And you find that you eat a whole lot less because you're actually getting nutritional value out of your food. And
And
you
I
know,
actually
the people that
encourage
do it, the farmers.
people to eat less meat. I encourage them only to eat the
Yeah.
size of the palm of their hand. I feed John more because he's an O blood type, so he needs more, but I am perfectly happy to have a high quality piece of meat that's a smaller portion, because that's
Yeah.
what keeps my body feeling good. And so,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of ways around it so that you can make it work in your budget.
Yeah, and that was really the Morrison family's idea of doing doing the Jersey steers, is that it's going to be a smaller animal, and instead of having a T-bone steak that's bigger than your plate, you have a T-bone steak that's an appropriate size piece of meat. Unfortunately, the market's just not there yet. American ideals have not come around to the idea that you should be eating less, and that again, back to the COVID and the changes we're making with that is, so typically when we're doing beef at the farmers markets, we're doing a full variety of cuts, and people want to see that big steak, and they want to see all that. But with supply and demand, and the supply being low, the demand being so high, it really gave us the opportunity to educate people on, don't make meat your meal, make it the complement to your meal. When you're coming to the
Right.
farmers markets, buying smaller portions, buying ground beef, and utilizing that with your vegetables and stuff like that, and a more balanced diet. And
Yeah, I
there's
talk to
going to be
people about
positive
eating
impacts.
75% vegetables and fruit. And so your
Sure.
plate should only be 25% meat. The rest of it should be all the colors of the rainbow, and they work together to create health.
Yeah,
So you need to have the whole rainbow. But
absolutely
when I
right.
coach, I get people all the time who don't want to eat vegetables. They didn't grow up on vegetables. I have a client right now. She's finally eating starchy vegetables. Okay, well that's not going to get you where you want to go, but it's a beginning, because she
Sure.
wasn't eating any at all.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that feel that way. But really, you listen to your body. Your body's telling you what nutrition you need. And if you just listen, you will, open your mind to hearing what it's telling you, and you'll find that you do so much better, and you're eating less. You're and just feeling so much better. It's an amazing difference, and
Yeah.
I think I can see a lot of very positive things happening for agriculture here in the future. But it's going to take the support of the public,
Well, it's better for
and
the
it's
environment.
changing ideas. Yes.
Grass-fed, grass-finished cows that eat their own diet, they're better for a green climate. There's all kinds of advantages. And I'm not sure it costs more money to do what you're doing, but except that you're doing it on a smaller scale. Do you think
Yeah,
that it
I
costs you
think
more money to do this than conventional
I
ranching?
think as compared to the big operations, yeah, it's probably a bit more difficult for us, and but it's a labor of love at the same time. But yeah, I think that there are, the way that the system has been built, where a handful of major corporations own 85-90% of beef production in America. They own the feedlots, they own the ranches, they own the meat processors and they control the market. I definitely think it's a bit more costly for us to do what we do, to do it right. And we work extremely hard at what we do to do it right. We don't have the same kind of resource, and we're not doing the mass production. But it's, you
What
do
you're doing
things the
is so
right
much
way.
more humane than what they're doing.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. And I agree that, you know, that has a lot to do with the way that we're regulated by government industry right now. You look at USDA style slaughters, and they're rendering an animal about every 30 seconds on a concrete floor in a highly stressful situation. And that's where you get so much of your cross contamination within your beef. That's where you get your E. coli outbreaks, all of that. But by government regulation, we're told that this is far safer than what I do, where we peacefully render an animal in pasture. And we don't have the stress. Yes, we're taking an animal and standing in the pasture, and we're shooting it once in the head, and it's over extremely quickly. And this is, in my opinion, the most humane way to render an animal. And some people might not see it that way, but it's, hey, to each their own on opinions on this. But I don't
Oh, and
believe
the
for
way
a
they
second
hang
that,
them and all that stuff, it's gross what they do. Your way is
yeah,
definitely more humane.
yeah, I'd like to believe so. And we try to provide our animals with the best life they can. You know, when it comes to steers, when it comes to cattle, again, their lot in life is to become food. And the difference being is, you know, it's going to be a short life, but let's make it a good life. And when it ends, let's make them not really know that it's over. You know, let's just provide the best life we can for the time they have, and it's going to show in the quality of the product in the end. And you feel better about that. I mean, there's never it's always a stressful situation to me to have to put these animals down, because, you know, I've known them since they were born. Basically, I was
I
there
was going
when
to
we
ask
put
you
the
if you
brands
get
on,
attached to
gave them
them.
their ear tag. Some you do, absolutely. You know, there's others that you look at and you're like, man, I can't wait to be rid of you because you're just such a jerk. You know, you tear through my fence once a week, and I'll be glad when you're gone. And there's others that I'll be out there hand feeding, you know, especially in the summer, fall, when we got fruit on the trees, and I'll be out there, you know, picking the apples and the plums and the pears that the birds are getting on. And I've got some that just become pets, and it's heartbreaking. But we take solace in the fact that, you know, your life could have been a whole lot worse. You could have been in a factory farm somewhere, and you know, so we feel that we did the right thing for you, and we all got to eat. And most importantly, we got to eat good. And this is going to be the way to do it.
Makes sense. Yeah. I don't think I could do what you do, because I would have a really hard time not being attached to them. Since I was little, I
Yeah.
was running all over the neighborhood after every animal that existed, because I have a special place in my heart for them. But I eat meat, and I understand why it's important to eat meat. And I'd rather buy my
Yeah.
meat from somebody who has empathy for the animal like I do. That's also an
Oh, sure.
important thing. And that isn't polluting the earth, which is going to become a major problem here very quickly.
Yeah. You know, I remember as a kid getting what I thought was a pet pig, not realizing that was going to be pork chops and sausage here in a few months. And it was absolutely heartbreaking when it happened. I didn't understand that was his lot in life. And it was heartbreaking. But, you know, once he was in the freezer and wrapped in paper, and I'm eating really good food, it's like, well, it was all worth it.
Yeah,
So
I remember.
you should.
I remember that happening to me. When I was young, you know, around 10, and you know, in my teenage years, we used to visit the family farm in Minnesota, and they had a pig that was a pet called Pork Chop, and that was his lot in life was going to be there, and I didn't realize it. It didn't occur to me until actually things happened. You know, when we came back and no pork chop running around. So.
Well, the one
Shannon,
thing I will tell you, don't.
Shannon, did you also have autoimmune disease? I seem to remember that you did.
No, I've had migraines, and I didn't develop migraines until later in life. So migraines and that whole journey through having cluster migraines and trying to control those, trying different diets, the diabetic diets and South Beach diet, and really kind of coming around full circle to the way I was raised, and not eating a well-balanced meal with whole foods, no processed foods. It's really the way I was raised. It's the way our grandparents ate. For me personally, I have found that I do best when I go to the grocery store. I tell everybody to shop on the outside. Everything you need from a grocery store is on the outside. You should not be going down any of the center aisles. I will go down the center aisle for frozen vegetables during the winter when we don't have access to the farmer's market. But never canned vegetables, never. So it's just a different process. And I guess for me, it was more coming around full circle. So my migraines, once I changed my diet, really went from having them, they were debilitating, honestly.
I'm actually working on podcasts on the liver, and I didn't realize that if you're having lots of migraines, they might actually originate in the liver. Who'd have thunk? That because the liver is dealing with all the toxins in all your food, when it gets overtaxed, there is a connection. And the pain in your head can be overwhelming if you are not giving your liver the respect that it deserves, which is why I'm doing the podcast, because I don't think anybody gives their liver respect. I think we take it for granted. And I want people to understand what its function is in the body too. So you no longer.
And I think it's really important that people understand when you're chronically ill, whether it's migraines or an autoimmune issue, and these are very hard things where it's a debilitating issue, but you look well, and people from the outside don't understand. And when you get on Dr. Google on the web, and everybody has these miracle elixirs, and for $29.99 you can order it on the internet and it'll show up and fix you. And it's really a hard journey and a struggle, and there's no one right or wrong answer, and everybody's journey is going to be different. I think the really big takeaway that I would like to mention is that if you can get your body on track and eat healthier and regulate your body, if we go back to eating the way our grandparents did, that you can have, once you're kind of leveled out, you can have that special treat. You can have pasta one time and your body can handle that and process it. It doesn't mean you can have pasta every night. You can have a bowl of ice cream and not have these horrible side effects from the sugars like a migraine. It just can't be overnight. You have to get your body to a place where it will self-regulate, and then you can have those treats occasionally like our grandparents did and not have these horrible sugar side effects. And and you get that from the processed foods. We live in a society where everything's fast food and boxed food and instant food and microwave
fake food.
Fast food, and it's just, you're saving yourself time, but you're giving something up to do that. You can meal prep on the weekends and freeze your food and have the same meal out of healthy things that are made the same way. And once you get to that point and it becomes your lifestyle, you can go out to a nice restaurant and have a great Italian meal with the bread and the pasta and the sauces, and your body will be able to handle and process that, and you won't have those negative autoimmune or migraine or debilitating side effects. So I think that's really important to mention, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. The biggest thing I see with people when I'm talking to them about food changes is it's this overwhelming mountain they have to climb with no light at the end of the tunnel, and it seems like there's no reward, and I have to stay on this strict thing. And as soon as you tell somebody, or somebody tells themselves in their own mind, I can't have this and I can't do this, when it becomes a can't, it's something that's taken away from you. And then it does, that's a negative you're telling yourself. It's totally different if you say, I choose not to eat this right now and I'll revisit this later. If it's the
Because
power
I choose
in
to feel good. And if they would give it a chance, right. I know. The second
Yeah,
thing
so
people come up to me when I speak, they say, I don't want to be deprived. You're deprived. I
mhm,
said, no,
Yeah,
frankly, I was deprived when I was eating all that other crud because it was making me sick. So
yeah,
yeah,
John and I are foodies. We eat well and we do have occasional treats. They're just not the same as the old occasional treats. Now I'll
sure.
bake with almond flour, not with white flour. Um,
Hmm.
I'll bake with free run chicken eggs. Um, and I use coconut sugar, which is the lowest glycemic of the sugars, but I don't eat it every day. We don't need it every day. And I would not trade off how good I feel for all the tea in China. I don't ever want to go back to where I was. And so, am I
Absolutely.
deprived? Heck no. And if they would give it a chance, they would discover that, hey, my book is called It Feels Good to Feel Good because it does. If you do this, I don't think most people even know how lousy they feel because
Oh,
they've
very
never
true.
given
Yeah.
themselves a chance to feel good.
Well, feeling bad typically comes on so slowly that it's not an overnight thing. You don't just wake up one day and say, well, I really feel like crap. You have done this over such a long amount of time that it just becomes your normal, and you don't realize how bad you really are until you start making the change to get good. And that's when the difference shows. And it really did for me. I didn't realize how unhealthy I was, and I was in horrible health. I really, I'm very, very fortunate to be where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I had the
But
same
it
thing.
was just such a slow process.
The universe kept telling me that I was getting sick. I just was ignoring it until
Yeah,
until I couldn't get out of bed
yeah,
because everything hurt. And then
sure,
suddenly I was paying attention. And my
yeah,
doctor had no clue what was wrong with me, but she gave me steroids anyway. And I didn't want a life of pain and
mhm,
pills. So that's when I
no,
started researching. But had I paid attention before I went over the toxic load part into illness, I will always have
mhm,
autoimmune disease. But I wish I had paid attention before I got there, although I no longer have pain. So that's huge.
mhm,
That's why I'm
yeah,
out talking to people. I want them to do something about it before they get where you and I got, because
sure,
they'll lead a much better life. And both my books have a chapter on the blue zones, which is where they study the people who live the longest and keep their cognizance without illness, because it's
mhm,
exactly the same things that you and I are talking about and your wife is talking about. If you eat quality food that doesn't have the chemicals on them, and you eat quality meat that is treated with love and kindness and isn't eating stuff that has BT toxin in it, your body will feel better. And I sort of would like to keep my brain. I just turned 72, so it's coming around faster for me than it is for you guys. But I'd like to keep my brain when I start getting into my really senior years. That's important. My
sure,
mother lost hers. I don't want to go there.
yeah,
So, yeah. And Shannon, I want to ask you, since you and I first met, you've become a nurse, or at least you're practicing as a nurse. You
yes,
are
I'm a
probably
registered nurse.
healthier than most nurses to fight COVID in the hospital where you're working, right?
I'm not in the hospital anymore. I'm in an ambulatory clinic. So, as we're talking about health and being able to heal things naturally, I am a chemotherapy infusion nurse. I deal with oncology and cancer patients. That is my specialty. So, um, it's a really interesting balance for me, where on one hand, I spend 40 to 50 hours a week running the most toxic of chemicals through people's bodies while educating them on uh, lifestyle changes and food changes, because that's part of an oncology practice, is educating our patients how they can eat better. The
Well,
majority of our patients are
hallelujah. Not
encouraged
all
to,
oncology practices do that. That's
the
sad.
majority,
That's wonderful.
our patients are really encouraged to move to a plant-based diet or a vegetarian diet. It's really a great way to level your system, and then you can add meat back in. Um, I probably have a broader viewpoint, more lenient viewpoints. I know that I've told you before, I grew up in the Midwest. I've always been in a ranching or farming type environment, and I lived in the Midwest in a ranching and farming community, and I was a vegetarian for a long time, long before it was cool. And it was not so much because I wanted to be a vegetarian as much as we lived near the slaughterhouses and I just couldn't eat meat. I really respect that autonomy. I really respect everybody's personal choice. Incredibly, as a rancher, raising beef, I really respect people who live a vegan lifestyle and can stay healthy and adhere to that, because that's very, it's not strict and it's not stringent and it's not unobtainable. It does take some forethought and some work on your part, and but it's really a great way to balance your body. For my oncology patients that can do that for a time and then add meats back in, it's a great way for them to do that. So yes, since I've seen you last, I am a chemo infusion nurse, and I absolutely love it. It is an odd balance to have
doing what you love is
have
important.
a ranch and be doing what we're doing and then running chemotherapy all day. It is a big balance of things, but in that is also, for me, the science-based part where no, in fact, you are not going to cure cancer with food. So here, we're at a point now where you have cancer cells, and from the biology standpoint, here is how cancer progresses and moves forward. Here is what we need to run to kill those cells off, and here's how you can change eating. I think the beautiful thing about being an oncology nurse is that you can encourage people and talk them through their treatment while encouraging those CAM therapies and lifestyle changes and stuff like that. So kind of a unique position that I'm in.
No, it's great. I congratulate you. So I'm just going to use this as the podcast. We had the whole conversation, so I'm not going to make us do it again. But I want to know, is there a way that people listening this have access to your beef if they don't live where we live in the Verde Valley?
We keep the ranch pretty much open to the public by appointment. We are licensed to sell within the state of Arizona. That is how it works for us. We're not shipping across state lines. We're not, freezer packing stuff and sending UPS. If you're not within the state of Arizona, I'm sorry, we can't help you. If you are within the state of Arizona, we'd love to have your business. At the same time, we are a resource for helping you get in contact with other ranches that might be closer to your area, that might be closer to what you're looking for your dietary needs, for your flavor, your texture, what have you. So contacting us basically through the website's probably the best, www.plowingaheadranch.com. Take a look at what we're doing there. We're trying to be pretty good about answering emails. Sometimes it takes us a couple days, be patient. We are two people running this entire ranch on our own. There is no employees. So it's Shannon dictates and I do. So
and you do farmers markets all the way down into Phoenix and Scottsdale in the summertime, right?
Over the winter, we were doing a North Phoenix market, and we would love to be back there. We love the clientele. We love the other vendors down there. Supply and demand again right now is our biggest issue, that we are very limited in the state of Arizona on how many meat processors we have in general. Then I limit myself even farther to the ones I will choose to work with by their ethics, their standards, their way of doing things. So it's not a matter of how many cattle we can raise right now. It's how do we get them from point A to point B? And we still have the supply line issue that the demand is very high for locally grown foods now. And it's overwhelming our meat processors. And, they've been great to work with us, to be as fair with everybody as they possibly can, keep us in those slots. But the demand is so much that it is not efficient for me right now to try to work a farmer's market in North Phoenix, because I just do not have the supply to make it worthwhile to get down there to do what I need to do. I mean, we've started doing a lot more, going away from a lot of the roast and different cuts, and doing more with ground beef, with stew meat, smaller things that you can portion out smaller and complement your meal rather than be in your meal. So hopefully we get to a point where we can get back to that soon. We're really actively working with legislation from everything from our town level at the town of Camp Verde to the county level with the Yavapai County supervisors. We have a couple new supervisors that took office this year that are just been absolutely outstanding to work with and really understand the needs of small ag and trying to make the changes there. And then going as far as our state legislature and saying, look, you know, we need to change regulations. We need support for this business that we're trying to do, because our business is supporting our community, our state, and it's time for you guys to step up to the plate and, you know, make this more accessible. You know, find the resource to allow smaller processors that are only registered through the state of Arizona, through Arizona Game and Fish Department, to be able to make the changes to go Arizona Department of Agriculture inspected. And it's a very, financially, it's a huge investment for them. And most of them won't do it right now because the state's coming back and saying, well, you can do it if you want, but we can't guarantee you we'll have an inspector because we don't have it in the budget. Well, let's get smarter about our budget and really start supporting these local businesses that are doing such a great benefit for our community. So yeah, so right now, yeah, it really is. It's truly important. So right now, the best way is just contact us through the website. If you're in the area, you know, again, transparency, you're always welcome to come out, see the ranch. I wouldn't recommend it today. We've been getting rained on for almost a week straight. It's kind of a swamp.
Probably muddy out there today.
Like I always tell everybody, you know, bring your muck boots and bring your manure shovel, and we'll put you to work while you're taking the tour. So we use all the help we could get. But it really, you know, it's we appreciate any business we can get. And we also appreciate anybody that's going to support local agriculture, whether it be us, whether it be other ranchers. Shop local, keep it in your community, and support these guys, because they're not doing this. We're not in this business because it's a profitable. We're in it because we need it, we love it, and it's the right thing to do.
And if you support it, you get a higher quality of food, which creates better quality health for you. So it's a win-win for everybody. So fantastic.
And the closer it comes from the farmer, the more nutrition there is.
Right.
Yeah.
I would encourage people to reach out and look for their local farmers markets or their local resources. Regardless of where you're at in the country, I can only speak on our own small little ecosystem here, but we have a group called Local First Arizona. And when you get on the Local First Arizona page, you can search by your area or by the product you're looking for, and it will list all of the producers in that area. And that's an amazing resource. You can see all of the ranches, you can see who's producing, you can find pork and chicken. And so that's for us in Arizona, a great resource. I would assume that there's similar resources in other states. Going to those small mom and pop natural food stores. I know in Sedona, Sedona is a huge destination spot here. So Sedona has a small mom and pop natural food stores called Interdependence. Is it Interdependence? Interdependence Market. Susie's amazing to work with. But it's a really small mom and pop place where she's already made those connections for locally sourcing all of her stuff, and probably has a broader knowledge of her local producers than natural grocers or Whole Foods. So really kind of seeking out those small mom and pop places and looking for your natural, you know, your ranchers, your producers, your ag producers, hitting your farmers markets, because from there you'll start branching out and making all of these connections. I have people that call me all the time, and regardless of whether they're buying my beef, if they live in the southern part of the state, I always suggest they look at Local First. I always offer them a list of ranches in their area. You know, I really don't care if people are buying beef from us or another ranch. I'm just happy they're supporting local agriculture. I think everybody should have those choices. Your producers will start having other resources for you. You know, this person is raising pheasant, this person is doing chicken, here's where we get our vegetables. So I would encourage people, regardless of where you're at in the country, start looking for those small mom and pop resources while you're start building those connections and having those resources available to you. There's a lot of them out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, and there's so many of them that are out there, and it's really surprising to me how many people say, I never knew this was here. I never knew there was a farmer's market. I had no idea this was something that was available to me. So it's out there, you just haven't found it yet.
And farmers markets are fun. John and I love to go to different farmers markets.
Yeah.
because there are the people, generally it's a great place to meet other people who want to be healthy, starting there.
Yep.
And then there's all kinds of fun things at each farmer's market. And obviously we live part-time in California and part-time here, and we have different things we look forward to at our own local farmers markets. And so if people would
Absolutely.
only give it a chance, Whole Foods sometimes dictates to their farmers things that are a little bit iffy in terms of what you're getting. But if you're actually going to the farmer, you have a better chance of understanding what you're buying. And it's
Yeah.
not dictated. So it's important. And, supporting small business is important. So, yeah.
Well, the great thing about the farmers markets is that it allows you to take the time face to face to educate people on why we do what we do. And that has been the biggest resource from it. Because I mean, Shannon and I are both naturally, kind of introverts, and we're not the social butterflies and all that. And I did not want to do farmers markets. I was like, I don't want to spend hours a day talking to people. It will be exhausting. But once we started doing it and realized, there's a great benefit, because so many people just don't understand what goes into this and why this is so much better, that I wouldn't trade it for the world now. I love the
And you
farmers
start to make
markets.
friends that come to see you at each of the farmers markets. So
Yeah, your customers become far more than customers. I mean, they become, close relationships where you're really, you know, getting to know these people on a deeper level, and creating those bonds and those friendships. And that word of mouth advertising is better than anything I could ever do with a radio spot, a TV spot, something like that. I mean, that face-to-face communication, and giving people the time they need to answer the questions is huge. And you just see the light bulbs going off in people's heads as you're explaining, why this is what this is. I mean, we both grew up in farming and ranching backgrounds. I moved to the Verde Valley at 3 years old. My dad was a working cowboy, and we figured there was enough ranches in this area that he could get fired once a month, and we wouldn't have to move for at least a couple of years. But it's the difference between old agriculture and new agriculture. It's finding the balance with that right now. And the way to do that is not to pit one against the other and say, I'm right, you're wrong. It's to say, let me do what I'm going to do, and let me see if I can prove that this is a better way, and change perspectives on how this works.
Well,
And
I can't tell you how often when I'm in LA and I'm buying my beef from Whole Foods, I'm explaining to somebody, you don't want that because it's not grass finished. What's
Correct.
grass finished? They don't know, and they don't feel comfortable asking the questions. But it makes a huge difference if it's, why do you want to pay all the money for grass fed if he's going to get finished off on GMO corn and have all of the toxins in him anyway? And they just are unaware. They're just not educated. And yet it's an important thing. And so at farmers markets, you can actually ask those questions and you can explain the difference. And then they can taste the difference and feel the difference. So
I'll tell you, as a customer of yours, I really enjoyed talking with both of you. You both gave me a different perspective, about what it was, what your lifestyle was, what your product was, and everything else. And, and as you have seen, we've become loyal customers.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, we've certainly enjoyed working with you
guys
folks.
Too. And I appreciate you doing this today, because I think
absolutely.
a lot of people don't know any of this. And so if we can touch some people out there and give them a new understanding, then that's fantastic. So what I'm going to need from you is a short bio and a picture. You can do a picture of the two of you together, or a picture just of one of you, so that when we make the meme for the podcast, we have that to put on it. And this will probably not play until March, but as soon as it does, I'll email you with the link and everything so that you know that it's there, and then you can pull it, or I can send it to you and you can use it as advertising if you want, or you can put it on your website if you want.
No, we absolutely will. Yeah, you can count on that.
Because I want this to be a win-win for everybody.
Oh, it absolutely is, Cheryl. And I hope this is the first of many of these we do, because as I said before, we're constantly evolving, we're constantly making changes, and there's some really exciting things that we're doing around here. The way we've, last couple of years, the way we've changed our grazing structure with the more intensive mob grazing style, with much smaller pastures with more animals on it for a smaller amount of time. Being able to showcase the difference that's making, and getting away from the point system within the county that says you can only have X number of animals. Well, no, I've actually got, and I've worked with the county to say, look, I want to do way more animals than you tell me I can for the amount of land. I'm going to prove to you that not only can I do it, but I can actually create regenerated pasture, not just the sustainability, but improve our pasture health. And we're working closely with the USDA, Natural Resource Conservation District, the Nature Conservancy. We're implementing water conservation projects. We're working with Mother Road Brewery with their conservation projects. We're keeping more water in the Verde River, and we're changing the hearts and minds of people of how we do better. So I'm hoping this is not just a one-time thing, but that we continue to.
Well, we'll do it again. I would love to have you back.
Yeah, absolutely.
So fabulous.
We'd love to be back.
Are you a member
sure
of the
appreciate
Grass-Fed Beef Association?
We are not. Our time has been spread so thin between a lot of different things over the past few years. We're hoping to branch into more of that and start working more closely with the Arizona cattle growers and some different organizations like that. It's just time, and which is something we haven't had a lot of lately. But every change we make,
we buy organic food from people who aren't certified. Some of this stuff costs a whole lot of money, but it doesn't change the quality of the food. So,
and that's a really good point, and maybe a speaking point for another podcast. Definitely not something we have time to delve into today, but keywords. So for us, the farmers markets end up being an educational point. People show up at a farmers market wanting to eat better, and they have a basic idea from keywords that they've been told from the media. Are your steers Black Angus? They don't know really what that means. And I'm going to be honest, there's no difference in taste between a Black Angus or a Red Angus or a Charolais. They all taste the same. But they have an idea that that's a better steer. They come in asking if we're feeding GMOs without knowing what that really means. Now, being a science-based person, I'm going to say something really controversial that you may not agree with right now, but all GMOs are not bad. There's a reason we genetically modify certain things. Personally,
but there's actually a difference between engineering and genetically modifying. Genetically modifying would never happen. It's a definition where we would disagree. I say GMO is one of two things. They've either gotten Bt toxin in the plant that grows right up in it, so when the bug bites it, it blows them up, or it's been made Roundup ready. It doesn't mean that we didn't make carrots turn all the different, or I think they were all the different colors and suddenly they all became orange for a while. That's engineering. That's not genetically modifying. There's a difference.
So there's those differences, and they're keywords, and I think people ask about it without actually knowing what they're asking. At the same time, they come to a farmer's market asking, they know they're looking for a better quality food. So they ask, is it grass-fed? And I can't begin to tell you how frustrating it must be as a consumer when it is so frustrating for me as a producer. Do we call it grass-fed? Is it grass-finished? Is it grain-finished? We can't call ours organic because we can't afford that certification. It turns out with organic foods, you're still allowed X amount of chemicals into something. By law, you can still use X amount of chemicals. So the whole idea that it's organic, it's really not what you think you're getting. And it can be grass-fed if it's been eating moldy hay in a feedlot, because that's grass-fed. What you're really looking for is grass-finished. Is grass-finished the right thing for us to do in Arizona? No, we supplement with the brewer's grain because it makes a better use of our resources, and it's better for water conservation. It's better for pasture health. It's better holistic management. We won't qualify as a grass-finished or a grass-fed program because we're using that brewer's grain. So there's all these keywords and parts and pieces and disconnect even within producers where everybody's trying to one up each other, where Zach and I are really pushing a whole there's so many ways to raise beef, and it's so frustrating for us trying to figure out, how do you market it? What do you call it? We can't say organic. It's not grass finished because we use the brewer's grain. And really all you can do is try and make those connections and educate people and say, find your small local producers, come out to their ranch and see what they're doing, what they're doing.
Ask questions, get to know them.
Yes.
Yes, please.
And I think it's really, I know how frustrating it is for us. We started out saying it's organic. Oh, wait, we can't say it's organic. It's grass finished. Well, it's not grass finished because we give the brewer's grain. And my argument has always been that the brewer's grain is barley, and barley is a grass, and we overseed our pastures with barley. And
Growing barley in the pasture right now.
So it's a really odd niche. And as difficult and frustrating as it is for a producer, I can only imagine how difficult it is for a consumer who's delving into this, wanting better food, asking questions without a full understanding of what they're asking. It's just
and not even understanding the answer necessarily when they get it.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, the title of organic is just so misconstrued these days and misleading. And we advertise ours as naturally fed beef because that's really what it is.
But natural becomes a tricky word too, because natural can be anything. It's misused.
Yeah, it's all misused, and it's all about perspective. And as a society, we want to believe that our businesses are doing the right thing by the people, but it's not necessarily true. So that's, again, we come back to the grass
are out there. Big ag is out there to make money.
Oh, absolutely. That is all it's about. It's about
big
mass
food
producing.
is out there to make money. They're not worried about how it's going to impact your body. They're worried about how it's going to impact their profits.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I had a customer bring me an article a couple of years ago that was just absolutely fantastic. I want to say it was Newsweek's that had produced this, but talking about how 90% of beef in the U.S. will never actually see a living blade of grass, that it all comes from, feedlots and so forth. And that's a scary thought. But that beef that never saw a living blade of grass was still advertised as grass-fed beef because it ate a grass product. So it's not just asking questions, it's knowing the right questions and talking to the right people that are going to give you the honest, straightforward answer. And it really comes down to transparency. And I think that's huge.
And that's why you need to get to know your farmer.
Get to know your farmer. Exactly right.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I've enjoyed the conversation, and I know the people who listen to my podcast are going to be thrilled to hear this. So thank you for taking a big chunk of your Monday morning to come talk to us. I am thrilled to be able to present this to the people who follow me. So thank you so much.
It was so nice to see you guys.
I know. Well, John was down there not too long ago. We still have some of your meat in our freezer. We were going to go back to LA, but since somebody's dying every 5 minutes there, and we called both our hospitals and there's no room of any kind, we felt more comfortable staying here for the time being. So I think we're going to be here till the middle of February, and then we're going to go home to get our COVID shots with our functional doctor, and then we'll decide what we're going to do from there. And we have two new kittens. I don't know if you've seen any tails go past here. They've been walking back and forth. We taught them to ride in the car, so they come with us. We started taking them on Sunday drives when we got them. So they're here and they're having a ball. And so we don't have to go back. We're perfectly good to stay here. And God knows it's beautiful here. So
that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
But
we sure appreciate the interest in our business and all the support you guys have given. And it's just really been fantastic to continue to forge these relationships and be able to, help some others along the way. So please keep doing what you're doing. And we greatly appreciate it. We appreciate the knowledge getting out there. And we look forward to doing more of this.
Okay. Well, we'll figure it out. I have a mentor in Scottsdale, and I'm going to pass all your information to her because she's willing to drive up to meet you, because she's heard me talk about your beef. And she knows a lot of people at Scottsdale. She used to be a newscaster there. So hopefully that will bring you some new business too.
We, hopefully we can make the changes on the other levels to do what we need to do to keep up with the business. I mean, it's been great for us right now that people have been understand that you have to be patient. This is slow food. This is the definition of slow food. This is not the time to try to change stuff up to make a quick buck. I mean, our product is going to be consistent. We're going to do things exactly the way we've always done. We're going to continue to do things the right way, and you're going to wait a little bit longer to get it. And but in the end, it's all going to be worth it. So
And
we
it's
just
night and
appreciate
day.
people's
The
patience.
quality of the beef is night and day. If somebody hasn't
you.
had the advantage of eating your beef, they'll be blown away, because there is a
Yeah.
huge difference.
I never get tired of hearing that, Cheryl. Thank you.
And if you want me to write something for your website, I will, because I'm a big believer.
Oh.
Okay, I don't want to keep you
Thank
any
you.
longer. It's already 11:15.
Okay.
Thank you so much for doing this. John is going to produce
Thank
this
you,
down
guys.
to an hour, and I will do an introduction, and you won't be able to say, thanks for having me, but that's okay. I'm just going to talk to them about why
Okay.
this was important, and we started having a conversation that was so good, I decided that this was the podcast.
Absolutely. That's the way to do it. So,
So,
all right.
thank
Well,
you.
you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you so much, and stay healthy.
Bye.
You too. Thank you. Nice to see you both. Bye-bye.